You're on, Brian.
What I'm going to cover today is a technique that I picked up from a guy named Kenny Luke. He's known as Gator on modelshipwrights.com. I was looking for an inexpensive, simple way to replicate water because I had built this stern boat with German pioneers, and I just didn't think it would look good sitting on a little stand, so I wanted to set it sort of in its natural environment. And what Kenny Luke came up with was a technique of using latex caulking, readily available at most home centers, some sponge brushes, and painting it basically with Delta Ceramic Coat or craft paints that you could get at local craft store. So the tools that you would use are relatively simple, relatively easy to acquire, extremely inexpensive. I think all combined I maybe have $5 worth of materials here to create some somewhat realistic effects. And as a step-by-step, this board right here kind of gives you the step-by-step on how I do it. I'm using a piece of sheetrock that I got out of my garage as my base. This is what the sheetrock would look like. I didn't have a chance to do it, but generally I would spray this down and peel the paper off so that it's just straight sheetrock available to me. Then I could carve and do whatever else I wanted to, like I did with my stern boat. Next thing I would do is put a liberal spread of latex caulk. It doesn't have to set up. You can basically work it virtually immediately. And I'm going to do a demonstration of how you can work it here. And then I've got a demonstration of different types of waves that I've done. One would be just, and it's kind of tough to see because I used clear latex on this one, but this would be just basically a calm ocean day. Then this is a little bit stormier. You got some stormy seas here. And then this was simply a way I did the wake on the boat. And then I kind of threw one more in there, doing a swift moving current, a river or whatever, with the water moving around a rock.
That's what that is.
So if you look at it, it's...
I couldn't figure out what kind of boat that was.
No, it's a rock boat. Okay. It doesn't float very well, but it does deter the flow of water. So that's basically how I do it. So put a liberal coat, I form my waves, and then I use a brown base coat. I airbrush the brown base coat using Delta Ceramic Coat. This one in particular is Autumn Brown Paint. And then I use a really thin wash over the top of it using, I use Delta Ceramic Coat, in this case navy blue, mixed with my thinner. So it was relatively thin. It was almost water-like, just more like a tinted water. And that was 2 coats there, so you can still see the brown sort of showing through it. So after the blue dries over the brown, then I'll dry brush with white. I just took, using Delta Ceramic Coat white paint, I dry brush all the high edges and all the ripples in the water, and then over that is 2 coats of Future Floor Polish to give it that wet look. So that's the basic overview of how I did the whole technique. To make the waves is really easy. I'll go ahead and I'm going to use my piece of glass here. I actually had a piece of sheetrock prepped and I forgot it at home. So I'm going to do this in 2 steps. First I'll do how I do the water, and then as an added bonus I'll show you how I did the bullet strikes for my boat diorama. So to do the water, all I do is take some of a gentle or a liberal application of latex caulk. And then using a tongue depressor or a craft stick that you can get at Michael's or wherever, I just thin it out, kind of like baking a cake, spreading the frosting on a cake.
Makes me hungry.
The thing I like about this technique is if you're not happy with the waves are looking, you can just wet this stir stick a little bit with some water and it'll smooth right back out. So after 2 or 3 times of doing it, if you don't like it, just smooth it back out and start all over. So. I've got several techniques I use to actually make the waves. One is to take either a thin or a thicker sponge brush, and all you do is dip the paint into the latex and just, dip it in, pull it. Once you build a little bit up on the brush, it'll start to actually pull it out, so you start to get that wave technique, where you start building those wave peaks. And then if they're a little too stiff for you, just fold them over just a little bit so you get that curve. If you want to do a wider variety, just dip it in and pull it straight back. So that's one technique that I use, using the sponge brushes. And again, if I don't like it, I just smooth it back out and start all over. And you can do them to scale if you like. I just kind of scaled mine what a wave would look like against a 1/35th boat. But if you're going to do something a little bit smaller, you use just gentle or even less pressure to pull the waves up. So if you can see that. So. All right, and then how I did the boat wake was I used my stir stick or my craft stick, and all I did was kind of dig it in a little bit and then just pull it out. So I got a longer series of wakes.
Very good. Lovely.
So that's how I did the boat wake, basically using a stir stick and some latex caulk. So let this cure overnight, and then the next day come back. I airbrushed my brown paint first, like I said, and then did a wash of blue over the top, and then I did my dry brush technique and overlaid it with 2 coats of latex caulk. Oh, excuse me, 2 coats of future floor polish.
With your initial painting of the brown, is that a thin coat?
It was enough just to because I was also using clear in this case. I just wanted some opacity there, something that would stand out against the blue, because you know we all look at the rivers around here. They're not all turquoise. They're not all blue. There's some mud and sediment that's stirred up. So I don't overspray it, but if you put too much, it's really not a bust on me, or it's not.
What do you use as your thinner for these paints?
For my thinner, I use a homebrew concoction of Windex, of denatured alcohol, and dish soap, just some natural dish. I use Dawn dish detergent. About 50% of Windex, about 40%. I fill up 1 bottle, about halfway with Windex, and then a little bit more denatured alcohol, and then I just put a little bit of dish soap on it just to break up the surface tension of the water, of the thinner that I'm using. So it spreads a little bit easier. I found that by using a little bit more dish detergent in my mix, it helps the paint stay liquid and consistent a little bit more, so it doesn't dry on the needle of my airbrush, and I don't have to clean it as often. So. To make the bullet strikes, again, I thank Kenny Luke for showing me the procedure. He basically did this exact model, just in a different setting, but instead of using bullet strikes, he used a technique where he took the interior of a big pen and made like artillery rounds impacting around the boat. So I just modified his technique a little bit, and instead of using the interior of an ink stick or a pen, I use paint bristle brushes. And again, I found this was in my toolbox. It's an old cheap acrylic or general purpose paintbrush. It's got several flavors of bristles. I tend to use the white ones. I just cut a couple off. I pick the ones I want to use, and to make the bullet strikes, all I did was just drag the bristle through the clear latex caulk until I get kind of what I'm looking for, that effect I'm looking for, so it kind of balloons out a little bit. And then I just let that dry, and it dries, as you can see, clear on the model, or pretty much clear, so that you got what resembles or simulates a bullet strike or a bullet impact. So I think for this particular model, I built about a dozen of the bullet strike bristles, and I just chose the ones I wanted to use. So that was my technique on how to build bullet strikes. Now the clear latex does come out. It's opaque originally, but it does dry clear once it sets up and cures. So that's my techniques on how to use latex caulk to do water and to do clear bullet strikes.
And how do you apply those? You just drill into there and stick it in?
I had a needle chucked into a pin vise, and I just kind of drilled a hole with it, and then I slid them in there. I used a little bit more latex caulk just as an adhesive, slid them in there, and just left them alone.
That looks good.
And that's it.
Could you, I know you may not have all the stuff, but could you try that bomb, that ordnance shell?
Yeah, actually, this demonstration came about because he asked last month, would you bring a demonstration on how to do water? Yeah, so next month I'll fool around with it a little bit. I actually just went and bought some.
I think you do the same thing, just get a bunch of
some styrene.
Put them in a circle.
Yeah. So I bought some styrene tubing, and I'll do a couple up and bring them in for next month. So that's it.
I got a challenge.